This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you guys tonight. Tonight we have a special Zoom call. It's wonderful to have a panel of experts and people that are passionate about babies, birth, and pregnancy. So here we have Anna Heintzelman. Is that how you say it, Anna? I hope I said it right. And then Debbie Gordon, and we have Karen Bunker, and hopefully we'll have Stephanie Fritz on here soon too. The idea of this is to help the women in the world know more about the natural, better way of birthing, and just to change your perspective or help you clarify your perspective on birthing and babies and pregnancy. So this is something I'm very passionate about as well. And I hope that this call will be very informative and valuable to you. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. We are wearing pink and blue tonight to celebrate. So why don't we get started with a little bit of information about you. So the question is, tell us a little bit about you and what you do. Okay, so why don't we start with you, Debbie Gordon?
All right, well, my name is Debbie Gordon. I live in Draper, Utah. I'm currently in Lake Havasu, Arizona on vacation with my family. I was born and raised in Wyoming as the seventh child of 13. And I grew up with a baby in my arms. At the age of 11, I knew that I wanted to be a nurse and that I wanted to help mothers and babies. And so I went from high school directly into nursing school, graduated from nursing school, and was hired as a labor and delivery nurse. And I knew that God was directing my paths. I really felt like this was my calling in life, my mission, my life's purpose. And so I have worked with childbearing women now since 1985, and it has been my love and my joy and my passion.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. I didn't tell you, but Debbie Gordon is my husband's first cousin. And we met when I got married, and she was just instrumental in helping me with all of my children. She's very passionate about babies. If you're driving with her and you get her on the subject, just watch out, because she's like speeding down the road and she's just really happy about it. And I'm like, okay, Debbie, calm down. But everything she taught me was so useful. And I learned so much, and I spread that information out to the world as much as we can. And I still dream of traveling the world and doing wonderful things with women, especially helping people with pregnancy, birth, and babies. So we've still got that dream together. And I really appreciate it, because my babies were born all vaginally, drug-free most of the time, except for the last two, which is just one little epidural, and that was all. Yeah, it was just brilliant. And over the years, as we are introduced to doTERRA some more and essential oils, I mean, it just kind of like added it to all of this and kind of made it even better. So don't you think, Debbie?
I made that very brief. I don't know if you want me to elaborate or not. So.
Yeah, no, it's up to you. However you feel like it. I think you probably have an opportunity to elaborate and add more to this as well. Yeah, so anyways, that is Debbie Gordon. And let's move on to, why don't we move on to Karen Bunker. Go ahead and share.
So I had a C-section with my first after a pretty traumatic labor. And I had a doctor come and shove his hands up me without gloves and without permission, because he was mad that I was a home birth transfer. It was just really, really quite traumatic. And the doctor said I would never be able to have kids vaginally. And so it really, really pushed me to fight for myself and really want to fight for other women. And so I just started down the doula path. And after about a year as working as a doula, one of my friends was like, why don't you just I said, well, if I really could, I would be a midwife. And she said, well, why don't you? And I said, okay, why don't I? Why? I mean, I can. And so I got my training under Kathy O'Brien, and worked as a direct entry midwife for this long before I finally started out with my last child. And I've taken a very, very long break ever since then. So.
Yeah, but it's still something that Karen is a strong advocate for. And I feel that this is something that we're going to have to share with a lot of our sisters here on out and into the future. So Karen is just here to add to this community and continue to advocate for babies and mums. So thank you so much, Karen. Yes. Go ahead, Anna. Introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Sure. So my name's Anna Heintzelman. About 13 years ago, when I had my fourth baby, my fourth of 6 babies, I had my first out of hospital birth experience. I'd had natural births up until that point in the hospital, but my fourth one was out of the hospital. And after that experience, it really changed my life. And I felt like my next step was to become a midwife myself. And it's taken years for me to get to the point where I felt like I could really become a birth worker, because I'm still raising all my small babies. And I know, being on call in the birth world is
Come ahead.
very...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, shoot. Did I lose you?
No, go ahead, Anna. Just had
all
to
right.
lose.
No, that's okay. I thought my internet went out. Anyway, so I just felt like it was the next thing in my life, but I knew it would be a long ways off. And so about 3.5 years ago, I decided to become a doula, which is more, for those of you who may not know, the role of a doula is to provide more of the emotional and physical support, not the medical support of like as a midwife or midwife assistant would. And so I decided to start there. So I've been a doula for 3.5 years, and then and then I, about 3 years ago, became a midwife assistant as well. So I do both. I'm a doula and a midwife assistant. And someday I plan to be a midwife as well, but it just hasn't happened for me yet. And too many other things with my children. And now my kids are starting to leave home, and it's definitely now in my heart's, feel like it's that next calling, just waiting for that time to be right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. Isn't it so important that women know their power and know as much as they can about this? So I am loving that you guys are here, and you guys, it takes a special person to be a doula and midwife. I know Anna and I know Debbie has had experience where they've been at a 30-hour birth, right? Something crazy. How long?
My record is 54 hours.
Okay, that's super long. And, to have that amount of passion and patience and love for babies and the moms, and that takes a very special person. So I'm really grateful to have you guys here. I was just, with my sister, I was like, I'm just going to be an amateur doula and just jump in there and help her because we don't know anybody else. And that was super awesome. And then I had a local friend that, texted me at 11 o'clock at night and like, Jade, come and help me. And so I had Debbie on the phone. We're texting back and forth the whole time, but it felt like she was right there with me. And it was, it's just a small experience with like 4 births already so far. But I really appreciate the amount of work and the amount of love that doulas and midwives have for this work. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so let's talk about the next question. The question is, why is it important that women know about the natural birthing options? So why is it important? Who would like to go first? Go ahead, Debbie.
I'll unmute myself here.
Yep.
I worked in the hospital for 27 years before I left the hospital to do my own thing as a doula and a hypnobirthing practitioner and a wellness advocate with doTERRA. Why is it important for women to know about natural birthing options? When I moved to Utah, I was not prepared for a 98+% epidural and induction rate. I should flip that. I was not prepared for a 98+% induction epidural rate. I found that the two very much went in hand as far as percentages. And I remember stepping back one day thinking, what in the heck are you people doing with birthing? It was very mechanized. It was robotic. We had every 15 minutes, we had things we were supposed to chart on with all of these patients, things we were supposed to do. We were looking at monitors and machines much more than we were looking at the patient. And I remember just being really taken aback by that and wondering, what in the heck are you people doing with birthing? I had never seen so much difficulty with recovery. I had never seen so much difficulty with breastfeeding. And I really felt like what we were doing medically to manipulate birth was quite meddlesome. And I struggled. I will say that in all of my years of working in the hospital, I sort of bucked the system, always trying to make things better for the client and for women and helping them do birth their own way. And I remember multiple times in Utah, not in Wyoming. In Wyoming, in 3 years, I saw 3 epidurals. And now remember when I started in 1985, so that dates me a little bit. But in those days when we administered an epidural, they were new. And the anesthesiologist had to sit right beside the patient the entire time of labor and birthing. Now imagine women having the anesthesiologist sit there and watch you the entire time, and how, what's the word, extraordinary and natural that was, right? And so, but what that meant was that when we placed the epidural, it increased her risk factors. And that's why he had to sit beside her that entire time. And so when I moved to Utah, now I was accused, of course, living in the dark ages in Wyoming, having only seen 3 epidurals in 3 years. And so coming from into Utah in 1988 with more than 98% induction epidural, I didn't see a lot of inductions in Wyoming. I saw many more spontaneous labors. And yes, I did see medicalized births, but I saw many more spontaneous labors. And so I found that I really thought, what is the spiritual disconnect with women and their birthing bodies? And I really felt that women did not trust their creation. They did not trust their creator. And I trusted that immensely. I knew I was just inborn with this. I think one of my gifts was the fact that I trusted that God gave us everything we needed in all aspects. Thus, adding doTERRA to my birthing practice was a natural accompaniment. It came naturally. I was searching for, and we'll talk about that later on with your other questions, Jade.
Yeah,
but at any rate, I really found that women need to trust their creation and trust their creator. And that's pretty much my mission statement, is that I empower confident mothers to trust in their creation and in their creator. I really do believe that God gave us everything we needed to not only conceive and birth our babies, but also to carry them. And you know what, I have a pretty rough pregnancy history myself. And so I do know that along the line of that we do have to trust and we do all we can with what we know and what we learn and what's available to us to bring our babies into our homes. And so moving away from that medical mindset into trust, I think is one of my big belief systems, I guess I would say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Debbie. And her website is called Nurturing Instincts, guys. So that tells you a lot about her. I love that she talks about the spiritual disconnect, because it is a spiritual experience when you birth and bring a child into the world. how a child is born sets the tone for that child, and that's what I learned from Debbie. So when you do it happily.
Jade, let me add one more thing to that.
Good.
My website is, I've been working on a new website, TheDebbieGordon.com. I have not been able to put anything more on my Nurturing Instincts website for probably 3 years. My web team locked that up. And so at any rate, I've been working on a new website. It is now up and running. You can go there to the Debbie Gordon or TheDebbieGordon.com and see some more information there and reach out to me on that website.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. I love it. All right. Jamie, do you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to comment on why it's so important to know that there are natural options, because I've had a lot of friends who gave birth before me, and I would say that the doctor's interventions with the way they gave birth made their experience horrible, because I've had 2 friends that were told by their doctor, oh, your baby's going to be too big, so we need to induce you early. And both of them had babies that were like just barely over 2 kilos, you know, which is like over 4 pounds, I think.
Yeah, that's tiny.
Tiny. And yeah, and then so many other ones who were told worst case scenario, so you have to get a C-section, you know, and really there was nothing really wrong with them.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted to, you know, have a natural birth plan at the beginning, but once they speak to a doctor, that just goes out the window because they don't know that there's another option, right? And yeah, there's just so many instances. I mean, like my sister and I, we didn't really know much about what we could do, but we were determined that I was going to have a natural birth. And we didn't have any experts around like Debbie, like, because we're, you know, I'm in Australia here, and we just did what we thought in our hearts was the right thing to do. And I was heckled by doctors every, half an hour? They came into my birthing room every half an hour. Do you want a drug? Do you want this? You need intervention. You need intervention. You know, you need to do this. No, you've been pushing for too long. Like, okay, we can't leave you any longer. We need to do something, you know. And it was like the whole time I was being heckled, it was not a very good experience for me. But we were determined that we weren't going to let them, you know, affect our plan. So we were straight up real mean to the doctors and told them to get out of the room. And my sister was like real Nazi. But yeah, I think it's so important to share with all our friends that, look, you know, you do your research and you stick with your guns, and, you know, don't let anyone scare you to do some other things that you feel like you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jamie. Yep. Sierra, make it quick.
I agree. I just wanted to add, you know, she said that it was like meddlesome how the doctors proceed to tell the patients how they're going to birth. And it's not just that, it's literally taking the rights of the patient away.
Yep.
And that's what I experienced on my first birth. And my water had already broke, so I should have been good to go, good to die. I wasn't dilating though, so they immediately told me I needed to be induced. But I'm like, why do I need to be induced if my water's already broken? You know, don't I just need to like walk and sew the birthing out? They wanted me laying down because I started bleeding, which we found out later was because of a placenta tear, but the baby was fine. And it was 16 hours on my back with a horrible, to be induced is just a horrible, horrible way to deliver. It is extraordinarily painful. I was refusing an epidural, and but I want to just reiterate, your rights, like stick to your rights, what you know you're allowed to do. Because I almost let doctors take over on the first pregnancy and do what they needed to do because they were saying my baby was at risk and all this other kind of stuff. So I really educated myself quite a bit more of my rights going into my second and third pregnancy. And I knew I never wanted to have an epidural, just that was my personal choice, only because I didn't want to take the risk of possibly being paralyzed. I wanted no pain medicine to affect the baby as well. So I stuck to those guns, and they actually made me, I had a very adamant doctor on my second pregnancy tell me that I had to sign the piece of paper in case of emergency situation that I would take the epidural. And I said, no, ma'am, I don't have to sign that piece of paper. If there's an emergency situation, then you would, you would put me under. And she told me all the dangers of aspiration. I was like, and that's why you intubate. So I mean, like, I already knew what I was like, I don't want to be awake if y'all are cutting up in my stomach anyway. So if there was an emergency situation, I still did not want to take that risk. And she literally made me go see a psychiatrist to be evaluated because I was so adamant on my decision. So it's very important to let, young or whatever age, especially young, that just haven't educated themselves, let them know what their rights are and that they have choices. I love that you're doing this, Jade, and I'm going to share it with like all these young new mothers and mothers to be, because it's so important.
Yeah, it's so important. Thank you. You are so strong. Fantastic. So Karen and Anna, why is it important for women to know this information?
I'll go. I think, to sum it up, the moment you enter the hospital, you're in protection mode. You are protecting yourself from the doctors. And I mean, I have in my career, I saw 2 exceptions to that. And it's just the difference between faith and fear, really. Because in a natural birth setting, you are just listening and putting your faith, and the whole team is putting their faith in this mother and this baby, and they're just listening. They're just listening to God. They're listening to her. And it's just a completely different experience to walk into a birthing room where you have to protect yourself versus where you're supported.
Beautiful. I love it. Anna?
Yeah, the main reason why I became a doula was exactly what Sarah was saying, is that educating women on what their choices are, because I can't tell you how many times after I had my first baby and I had so many people, ask me about my birth experience or, just how I was raising my children and different things. And they would say, well, you have to do this, or you had to do this. How did you not have to do this? I said, do you have choices? You have rights. You need to go in knowing. And I was amazed at how many of my friends and my own sisters and sister-in-laws who just believed that you get told what to do by doctors, by society, by culture, that, this is the way and the only way. And I grew up, my grandfather was an OBGYN, and he's amazing. And I think there's a lot of amazing doctors out there who are supportive, but I would say the majority of doctors in this day and age are exactly what Karen was saying. You have to go in protection mode because hospitals have policies and they are already set up for the worst case scenario. So, one of the big things in a hospital setting is, you walk in and you are no longer able to eat. And it's not because it's not safe to eat when you're in labor, it's because they are already prepping you for a C-section. So those are just little things that women don't understand or know why they have to do certain things, so just educating is so important, and to know they have choices and rights. But like Karen said as well, knowing that delivering outside of the hospital, whether it's at home or in a birth center, there's so many other options besides hospital settings that are just as safe. Midwives have everything they need for emergency situations. obviously there's times that you need to be transferred to the hospital like Karen had to be. And, those are obviously worst case scenarios. We want to protect them, but, midwives come prepared to have everything that they need. And so just educating women, knowing that, so many people assume that a home birth setting is, oh, this crazy hippie lady is delivering out in the woods with a deer. Not, not necessarily, they have things that they need. And, as we'll talk about more, there's so many natural things, homeopathy and essential oils, so many things that are available that, but also they have medical things as well. And so I think making sure that women feel safe is the most important feeling during labor. It's the most vulnerable time, I feel like, in a woman's life. It's probably the most sanctifying experience that women ever go through. It's the closest where I feel that we are to the veil in this life, even more than others. And so I just feel like it's so important to feel safe.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. It goes right along with what Karen and Debbie said. I love that you said, you are supported versus being on the defense or, offensive. And, what these ladies are telling you guys is you can rebel against the common beliefs. My brother-in-law, he had this exact beliefs. He thought that, like a lady goes in labor and it's like turmoil and we're screaming and then we run into the hospital and the lady poops out a baby. So it was totally different experience for him, and it was spiritual, and he loved retelling it like as if he's done it all himself. But we Jamie and I are like letting him have the credit, because it was like, dude, it is totally different, right? And it's not like the movies. But you guys listen to this message that these ladies have for you. It's just rebel against that crazy culture, right? It's not a health problem to be pregnant and to have a baby. It's not a health problem. It's a privilege, and it's a spiritual opportunity. Like Anna said, very close to the veil. And there's something profoundly, just sacred about this that we need to kind of review again. So good. Okay, so the next question, ladies, is what essential oils do you use in your practice? So just, this is an open question, so just share whatever.
Jade, I just want to tweak that word rebel just a little bit.
Okay.
Because that puts us into fight or flight. And that's
true.
that protection mode that Karen was talking about. Okay. And fight or flight counteracts all our body's natural mechanisms to birth our babies calmly, gently, and more comfortably and well. And so the two most important decisions you make in birth, in preparing for your birth, are first and foremost your care provider. And secondly, your birthing facility. Where are you going to birth? Those two decisions stem from those two decisions stem everything that happens next. We don't have to go in rebellion mode or into fight or flight or into protection mode if we make sure we are surrounded by a supportive birthing team. Choose well. Choose well. Okay. And secondly, if we choose to go to a hospital setting to birth our babies, first I want to say birth is a normal, natural, physiological experience. It is not a medical event. We go to the hospital for medical events. This is not a medical event. However, sometimes we need medical assistance, and then we go to a hospital, or we start off at the hospital, depending on our circumstances. My last birth was a placental abruption. It was a 911 call, an ambulance ride to the hospital, an emergency cesarean. I was grateful, and I learned from that birth that we do need well-trained physicians ready to do the surgical intervention if we so need it. However, birth is a normal, natural, physiological event. Now, there's lots of things that play into that in regards to how we take care of ourselves, what we put in and on our bodies, our toxicity exposure. That plays a big part in how healthy we are during pregnancy. And so labor and childbirth are a normal, natural, physiological process for a healthy mom and baby. We need to pay much more attention to that prior to conception and throughout our pregnancy. It makes a big difference in our recovery too. So with regards to your last question,
Mhm.
how do I incorporate essential oils into my practice? First of all, I listen for needs. I was asked to provide backup doula service for a gal that lived about 4 minutes away from me in Draper, Utah recently. And as I went in, she was having preterm labor at 34 weeks. And as I went in to meet her for the first time and offer support, emotional support, as Karen talked about, as Anna talked about, our role as doula is to provide emotional, physical, mental, spiritual support for this birthing mom. And I consider my job as a doula to find out what it is the mother desires in this birthing experience and wrapping myself around helping create her ideal birthing experience according to what she perceives it to be. And so as I walked in and met Shelby and her husband, she came downstairs from her bedroom to meet me and sit on the birth ball. And she was clearly having contractions every 2 to 3 minutes right in front of me as we talked. And eventually we moved her back up to her bed where she could rest and we could slow things down. But she had been throwing up her entire pregnancy every single day. That's not pleasant. I don't consider that to be normal either. And I believe we can do something to help that. And the medical approach is pretty intense. And I loved, would you be open to essential oils? Actually, I think I said, would you be open to natural solutions? What do you know about essential oils? Would you be open to a blend of essential oils that might support you in this nausea and vomiting that you're experiencing? And I gave her, I just pulled out my sample pack, which I carry with me in my doula bag. And I pulled out Digestin and had her smell it. And then eventually tap onto the back of her hand and taste it, and lick her hand and taste it. 3 days later, when I followed up with her, she said it had helped dramatically. It's so simple. It's so simple when we use natural solutions. She was suffering at 34 weeks. She had had her first baby at 35 and 5 weeks. And so she was struggling with anxiety and feeling a great deal of stress, wanting to protect this baby and wanting to hold this baby in just a little bit longer. And so at any rate, I offered her some solutions, some essential oils for anxiety. And I gave her adaptive, and I gave her balance, and I gave her serenity. She was struggling to sleep. And I taught her how to use those, and it helped tremendously. Now, when I left Draper last Saturday, a few days ago, she still had not delivered. Oh, another thing I did was I gave her a sample of lavender. And had her just put a little bit of lavender on the top of her uterus as we were sitting there in the living room on the birth ball. That did start to calm things down. And then we took her back to her room and had her lay down, and things were calming right down after we did that. And so I use all of doTERRA's essential oils in childbirth, in labor, in pregnancy. I do not believe, hear me outright, just be patient with me for just a moment. I do not believe that doTERRA's products are dangerous during pregnancy. I do not believe that essential oils can cause miscarriages and with our wellness. However, I give mom a simple rule with regards to essential oils. If she opens up the bottle and she smells it and she goes, oh man, that's gross, I say, put the lid back on and set it aside for a time. And so clary sage is one of these oils that very often people say clary sage causes miscarriage. It does not cause miscarriages. Now, let me just put that out to you for a logical viewpoint for a moment. If it did, in fact, cause miscarriages, why do we need the after pill, the day after pill? It could be as simple as a drop of clary sage, but it does not cause miscarriages. Neither do massages in third trimester bring on preterm labor. If it did, when a mother was ready to birth, we would just wheel her down for her massage, and that would be her natural induction method, right? So that's not true. There's a lot of wives' tales out there, or a lot of mistruths, let me call it that way instead, a lot of mistruths that are not true. So I listen for needs and offer solutions and let mothers knows, tell me which one she wants to use. And I keep it really simple, okay? And so I use them all for various patients, various circumstances. And so some that I really love, like I used with Shelby, I love to use oils that are calming and relaxing. If a mother is relaxed and calm during her labor, she will birth more comfortably. If we can take her out of fight or flight, she will birth more comfortably. I love to have oil solutions for if she's tired. Very often, if we leave well enough alone, mothers will begin labor during the nighttime hours. Thus, Anna, we are called out in all times of the day and night to support birth, right? And so mothers will typically, often, not typically, but they will often start their labor in the night. That doesn't mean they're going to birth in the night. Very often they do, but not always. And so very often we need to recognize that when mom is calm and relaxed, that natural cocktail of hormones kicks in with the relaxation promotes endorphin production, which promotes oxytocin, which further deepens her relaxation, which produces more endorphins, more oxytocin, and the cycle continues. So I love to use oils that help mama be calm and relaxed. If she's tired because her labor started in the night, she missed a night's sleep, or in the case of a 54-hour labor, a couple of nights sleep, then we need something to invigorate her. And I love the combination of the mints with the citrus. We talk often about peppermint and wild orange. Spearmint and green mandarin is magnificent. If there's something that she doesn't like, I find something that suits her. So diffusing citrus bliss, diffusing peppermint and citrus bliss, or diffusing is a mint with citrus oils is magnificent. When she gets to that point of transition, now remember that transition means a change in activity. It does not mean painful, miserable labor that you're about to die. It means a change of activity. And mother has this surge of adrenaline that actually throws her into fight or flight if she's not anticipating that. So at the moment when mother says, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want to go home, I'm all done with this, I can't do this anymore, I need an epidural. When mother starts talking that way, we're very, very close. My former assistant just birthed a baby here in the last few days, and her comment as she shared her birth story was that she got to 8 centimeters without much effort. And then she needed an epidural. And by the time they got the epidural in, she was completely dilated and ready to push. And so very often when mother says that, I can't do this anymore, that's when the doula or the nurse or the birthing team needs to step in and offer more additional emotional and physical support to help her step into her power. And very often I prepare my couples through hypnobirthing to recognize that flow of adrenaline that comes as they are nearing the time when she needs that extra boost of energy to then bear down and help baby on their journey out. And I call that birth breathing and hypnobirthing rather than pushing. And so I really do trust that mamas have everything they need. And when she starts saying that, it's okay, let's get up and move. Before you go home, let's go to the toilet and empty your bladder, so to speak. All right. I'm not necessarily saying it in those words, but let's get up and go to the bathroom and empty your bladder. Let's move around. Let's go ahead and let her cry. Partner, if he's present, or I do slow dancing with them if he's not. Okay. Let's change her activity. I love to change up activity about every 5 or 6 contractions throughout labor. That makes a huge difference in how labor progresses. But I also like to step her into her game and help remind her that she is doing very well and she is nearing that time when she's ready to bear down and assist her baby into the world and into her arms. And so during that time of transition, that time when she's getting ready to do that work, I love to use balance or frankincense or something of that nature that helps them step into their game. Myrrh would be another option to help them step into their game, to help them have confidence in their creation, in their creator, in their birthing body, help them trust that they've got everything they need, and just let her let down that emotion. And once she realizes that she's really close, then we get her back in the driver's seat, and she does very well. And so all of doTERRA's products are products I use throughout pregnancy and labor and childbirth.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, Debbie. I'm so glad we recorded that. Lots of juicy nuggets there. And of course, you guys can stalk Debbie and be friends with her and get more info from her as well. But again, reiterating, instead of rebellion, we want to honor ourselves. Okay, that's a more positive way of looking at things. Honor our abilities and our intuition. And, you know, I love that Debbie taught me this, because it was so good. I helped my sister with this. It was so simple. The tips she gave were so simple. So when Jamie's water broke, 24 hours, nothing happened. The doctor's like, hey, Kay, we're going to have to induce her. And we're like, well, let's try clary sage and geranium on the lower abs and the ankles. And hey, 3 hours later, she was, 3 hours apart. 3 minutes apart, sorry, 3 minutes apart. And we were really happy about that. We had a lady, sorry, I'm going to mute that. So a lady, when Debbie was mentioning like the transition, right, and she was like, oh, like I can't do this anymore, and I'm texting Debbie and everything, and she was telling me, tell her to call upon the powers of women all over the world, and just the history of women who can do this, And so I said that, and then I put a drop of breathe oil in my palms, and I held it in front of her, and I whispered that in her ears, and she grabbed my wrist and she held it in front of her face, and she sniffed and calmed down, and then she was like looking like she wanted to bear down. And I was telling her husband, I'm like, go get the doctors now, go get the doctors, I think she's ready. And he's like, what, I don't, and the nurse is like, no, she's not. I'm like, she is ready, go check her. And she was 10 centimeters. It was great. But that transition part, I learned that from Debbie, and I'm like, okay, she needs to be calm, she needs to get this adrenaline and energy. And just whispering to her, look, women all over the world have done this. You can do it too, calling upon the powers of all women of the world, and they're all backing you up. You can do this. And it was like, ching, she was focused, and it was so fun to watch. So anyways, so good. Thank you so much, Debbie. Ladies, Anna and Karen, what do you have to add to this? What essential oils do you use, if you do?
Head Anna.
Okay. I'm similar to Debbie. There are some that I do sort of follow the avoid list on some of them, just so that I don't want anyone to feel like I'm doing anything unsafe. But at the same time, I do let them know that, everything is natural and safe. But the ones I use the most, I would say, I use a lot. There's some that I always carry with me in my birth bag. And then of course, during pregnancy as well, when I go do prenatal visits, I use, and a lot of times, sometimes it's just, I will muscle test before I go to my appointments, and I just know what they need. And a lot of the time it is more, things that are other emotional things that they're going through. So it isn't necessarily pregnancy related, but I think it's so important to feel calm throughout your pregnancy. And like we already discussed, that when babies are in the womb, what mothers are experiencing emotionally, they will feel those things. So they know what is going on, and they know how, when a mother is feeling safe and in control and feeling like she's supported during labor, the baby will feel all of those things. So it's really important for them to feel emotionally calm. And of course, everybody handles birth differently. Some are really quiet and some are loud. That does, my goal is for all of my clients to feel like they are in control of the situation. So depending on, I usually have them smell a bunch of different oils and tell that, we usually have, so if we are to leave, if it's not a home birth situation and we're going to the hospital, I always have a diffuser with me. Some of the hospitals here in Florida have diffusers in the room, which I think is really amazing. We've come a long ways since I was giving birth years ago. But I diffuse typically clary sage. Clary sage is great for bringing on harder contractions. So sometimes when labor stalls, I will rub their feet and push on pressure points on their hands and feet with clary sage. If they're feeling nauseous, definitely digestin and peppermint as well. I usually carry lavender, black pepper, serenity, balance, rose, adaptive. So those are a lot of the same ones. And then of course the citrus, depending on if it's been a long night and we, trying to get, and some people like more of the calming scents and other people like more of the clean citrus smell. So it kind of depends on what they like as well. But I think the most important thing is making sure that in labor, some applying oils versus just sometimes having them close are good, because like a diffuser you can turn off, you can change, because sometimes the scent will bother them. So just making sure that I always have them smell it first, make sure that it's something that they may have loved it prior to labor, and then in the moment of labor they do not want that smell anywhere near them. So it just kind of depends on the client and the situation, but those are the ones I probably use the most.
Thank you so much, Anna. That's so good. Karen?
So the ones that I have used the most are probably, so I'm going to hit it a little bit from a midwife perspective. We would use clary sage and fennel on the stomach to start labor, and evening primrose on the cervix. You can also do juniper under the tongue, and that just, especially, that will start labor all the time almost. Any of the floral oils, just what Debbie said with calling on the women of the world, I noticed that any of the floral oils in a tub, it just like in preparation for labor, or if they're stressed or anxious, it's just that push, to help push them over the edge and help prepare them. And then yarrow palm for hemorrhage. Okay, just yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yep. Okay. Sorry, she was gone, and now she gets a sleepover. Yarrow palm for hemorrhage. One of the things that I really love, and again, so much of it is depending on the mom and what she loves about oils, or how much she does, and is the frankincense and myrrh, the Jesus oils, the frankincense on the crown of the head, and myrrh on the umbilical cord of the baby. It's just a very peaceful, welcoming connection to heaven and earth. And then, and one that I have noticed recently, so I'm not active, but I still go to some births, because I have a lot of family, is console for postpartum. I've noticed that a lot, because it's just very comforting. Even if everything goes perfect, it's a huge, huge life change. And I've noticed just that extra layer of comfort, that reminder that they aren't alone, is very, very comforting postpartum. So
that's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it. Sierra?
I just had a question really quick. You're all mentioning clary sage being a pretty strong, powerful one to get things started. What if somebody really does not like that scent? What would you suggest as a replacement?
I have not found anything that does what clary sage does.
I find they really love it at the end of pregnancy. They do not love it during the first trimester. And that's why they put the lid back on and set it aside. And then we don't have to worry about what the internet says as far as clary sage causing miscarriage, right?
Right.
And I let their nose be their guide.
if they really don't, just don't use it. You can do the juniper under the tongue.
Yeah.
But if you don't like it, just don't use it.
Yeah, and you've got geranium, and clary calm is another option. Yeah, so
We use lavender as well, though.
Lavender is very calming. It just doesn't bring on contractions like clary, like they for completely different reasons of use.
Yeah, and it can up estrogen production, which can actually slow down labor.
And y'all haven't mentioned it yet, but I've heard before that you can use a specific oil on the cervix itself to.
Karen mentioned it.
Evening oil.
Primrose.
What'd you say? Oh, evening.
Evening primrose.
Yeah, hopefully that's the next one that doTERRA is going to produce. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So Terry asked, what about peppermint to activate things?
I think it would energize.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't used it to activate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, like what Debbie said, when you're in that transition and they have the adrenaline, it kind of like, ooh, wakes them up and gets them, to have more of a focus, and that's good. Yeah. So Susie is here tonight, and this is going to be her first birth out of 6 that is home birth and without epidural. So do you ladies have any words of comfort and encouragement for her, so she could, try this new approach?
How far along are you?
Susie, go ahead, unmute yourself.
I'm 26 weeks. Yeah.
First of all, Susie, congratulations.
Thank
You're
you.
making a different choice.
Thank
You're
you.
in for an experience of a lifetime. I believe you will walk away from this birth, or rather walk away from your bedroom into the bathroom and be very grateful you were at home.
Yeah.
And so a home birth is very different than a medicalized hospital birth for certain. And I trust that you have surrounded yourself with supportive people that actually have bought into your ideal birthing experience so that they are willing and ready to support you in that. And so I would say, again, trust birth, trust your body, trust your creation, trust your creator. Work really hard on letting go rather than labor. Work on relaxing. Your main job, I use a little prop in my hypnobirthing classes. Your main job is to relax. Your birth companion's job is to take care of everything else.
Okay.
We're going to train your hubby.
So this is the time when I don't use that word control, because your birth prep time is the time to have control. During labor, that is the time to pass off control to your husband, to your partner, to interact with the birthing team, to recognize what you need, to ask for help if he needs help in supporting you, to ask you what you want him to do, what you need from him, what would be most helpful. So I would, that's my recommendation. I'm sure Karen and Anna can add to that.
Thank you. You just speaking was like so calming. I was like feeling calmer when you were sharing all of that about helping the mother to be calm. And I do have a midwife and a doula. My doula is experienced and great, but not super experienced with oils. Like she has a couple, I think just kind of the main, like lavender is calming. So I think I will need to educate myself a lot with what oils I will need, and then just tell her, and I have them. And so and I'm just learning more about oils myself.
You can also have her watch this video.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, and you have access to all of these ladies. Yeah. So
Yeah.
brilliant.
You can stalk me, Susan.
No, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
One thing I would say is that when applying oils topically during pregnancy, remember that a mother has almost double the blood volume by the end of pregnancy that she started pregnancy with. And so she has more dilated vessels and she's more sensitive. So less is more during pregnancy. And so, yeah, T's talking about Stephanie Fritz's book. Too bad Stephanie's not on here, because I attended one of Stephanie's training really early on in my doTERRA experience back in 2010. Stephanie, I asked Stephanie because I had seen this list of all the oils that were unsafe during pregnancy. And not only what did it cause fear mongering and fear, but it actually was scary. Do I even consider using essential oils during pregnancy? And actually, it was Stephanie that said, throw those lists away. And I had purchased a book that talked about those safe in pregnancy and those not safe in pregnancy. And she said, throw it away. I did. I seriously did. I threw it away. And so I read her book. I've used her book. I've gifted her book multiple times to my clients. It was a gift that I would give in my hypnobirthing classes. And I found it really particularly helpful. Her first book was much more helpful than her second edition, because her second edition came out after the FDA came out to doTERRA, and she had to revamp it. And I watched Stephanie be incredibly stressed when she had to rewrite that book and not advocate solely for doTERRA's purity and potency. And it was incredibly stressful for her. But at any rate, you've got what you need there. And you know more than your doula, so you get to choose. Use your nose. You get to choose what oils you use during labor and birth.
Yeah, beautiful. And you can hear the confidence in these ladies' voices, and it's very calming. Yeah. So Anna and Karen, what words of encouragement do you have for Susie?
Well, Susie, it sounds like you have set yourself up with a great birth team. So I think, like Debbie said, I feel like that's the most important thing, is making sure that you have the support team. And as much as I'm a person who likes to be in control of situations, Debbie's perfectly correct in that you can prepare all you want, but then in the moment of, an unmedicated labor is completely different. Being able to surrender is the most important thing. And learning to do that is a lifelong skill that we can use outside of birth. There's so many things that we have to surrender to in life, and being able to, trust our creator and know that our bodies were made in the image of God, and that our bodies know exactly what they're supposed to do. And so being able to trust yourself, trust your body, I think that's the most important thing. And, there's so many that you can, prepare for and set yourself up for, and things might go differently than you plan, but just having the sources, the resources, having the essential oils there, and having your, there's just so many ways that you can use them. And it even was, the doula training that I did, that is a, nationally accredited organization. The reason, I spent all this money to do my training and do the certification. And then one of their things said that you cannot use essential oils. And so I stripped myself of that and do not, I cannot condone that, because I know how much of a difference it makes to use essential oils in labor and pregnancy. And it's helped my clients and myself so much, and my 6 labors as well. So good luck. Everything's going to go wonderfully, and just, we'll have you in our prayers.
Thank you. Thank you. My last pregnancy in the hospital, I remember getting there and just feeling so tense and so not in control. And so I think to feel like I'm in a comfortable place surrounded with people that are going to support what I'm wanting, and like I have a voice, because you kind of don't feel like you have a voice when the doctors and nurses just rush around and do everything.
Yeah.
The word surrender, I feel like creating that environment will allow me to surrender.
That's beautiful. Visualize that, Susie, every night. Yeah. Karen?
I'm going to reference Debbie's hypnobirthing classes. I would highly recommend to take any sort of hypnotherapy birthing class. If your husband is nervous, he's nervous about what he needs to do, or like what that's going to look like, I would highly, highly recommend Hypno Babies, because it's super focused on partner training and partner support, and it makes you feel better. And I love watching, and it's not just for first-time dads, it's for first-time home births, or first-time, being that big of a support person. Hypno Babies is really thorough in training partners. So that's my one little tip.
That's perfect, because with my last, I walked in the hospital at a 7, and I felt like my body was ready to go, and I was ready to just deliver on my own. And I'm actually remarried, so I had 4 from a previous marriage. That was his first, and he was so afraid, like, I don't want to see you in pain, and just get the epidural. So he needs some support and like training. So I think that would be perfect.
It's amazing. I would highly recommend. I actually was certified as a hypnobirthing instructor, which is just the methodology and the principles behind all of that is awesome. But what I noticed with Hypno Babies was specifically helps partners and be informed, and the communication between the partners. So
Perfect. Thank you.
I do a great deal of that. So it's my desire to really bring this couple together for birth. I've always taught that birth was the culmination of lovemaking, and people would look at me with the weirdest faces. It's the very best part. The same cocktail of hormones that is involved in lovemaking is the very same cocktail of hormones involved in childbirth. And so, but if you think back to that moment of lovemaking, when it was tender and kind and safe and unobserved and unprompted
Inhibited.
and not interfered with, we need to create that same environment in the birthing room or in the bedroom of your home or wherever you choose to birth. We need to create that same kind of environment where it's uninterrupted, it's unobserved, it's private, it's personal, it's sweet, it's tender, it's kind, it's safe. And then we have that cocktail of hormones that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I do. I say the same thing to my clients, that the best way to get a baby out is the same way it got in there. And that is not necessarily, I'm not saying to have sex. I'm saying that same intimate moments that, produce natural oxytocin is what helps you to feel all those things that Debbie just said.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
But I just thought that at the beginning of labor is when you kind of want to murder your husband. And then when you give birth, then all these emotions come out. But I love the fact that you involve the husbands, because the husbands feel so useless. They want to protect, but they don't know how. And then you're in pain, and then they're just a bit lost. So I think that's great that there's actually a class that can help husbands as well.
Mitomax for husbands.
My husband just brought a bunch of candy, lollies, and just sugary food that made him feel horrible.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And look, Susie, you have lots of time to help your husband learn these things and help both of you visualize. So how exciting for you to get started on this journey like this. Yeah, I love that. The other thing I feel, the message that comes from these lovely ladies is that it's natural and it's not complicated. So sometimes we think it is complicated and we're like, oh, I have to learn everything. I have to know everything. So, Jamie and I, we're not experts on this, but we've had our 5th generation doTERRA baby, right? We, Debbie taught me and I taught Jamie, and Jamie taught her teammates, and then her teammates taught each other. And so this one girl, she went to the hospital, and it was like, well, how many hours? It was like 2-3 hours for Lyle's wife.
Oh, no, it was like an hour.
Yeah, it was really short, but it was like upline is on the phone, which is Jamie, and they texted us, and then the upline's upline, and then it's like the 3 generations, and then we're all there with her in the hospital. We're like got oils ready to go, and this is her first birth, and it was like boop, and it's like everything.
She's a tiny person too. She's tiny. We were actually at the it wasn't a convention, it was one of those mini post-convention things.
Yeah, tour.
Yeah. So she had to rush back and almost missed out on the birth because it was that far.
Yeah, so it was so good. Like the upline was up at the meeting, and then she came to the birth. But when they told us about it, we were so happy and so proud of them, because they got the message. The message trickled down that it's natural, she can do it, follow her instincts, use oils, be relaxed. And we're just so proud of her, and just proud of how this kind of movement, this message has trickled down to everybody. So don't feel like it's super complicated. Learn as much as you can, but don't be like, oh, I have to remember everything. You remember stuff, that it will come out. So yeah, that's what I learned. So Jamie, do you want to share something?
No, I just wanted to compliment what Anna was saying, that you need to feel safe. And I think I went into my first birth in a public hospital feeling that I needed to be protected the whole time, right? I think I was like 10 hours into labor, and And then the nurse said to me, "Oh, you're only 4 centimeters dilated." And then I started crying. I was like, "I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home." And that's when you pulled out the citrus bliss.
Yeah.
And you're like, "You can do it. You can do it, baby," you know? And I was like, now that I think back, I had 2 different types of births, because one was at a public hospital where I felt like I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I know I need to protect myself. And then my second one's like, okay, I've done this before. I don't need to be scared that I'm going to be bullied or anything. So I went into my second one and gave birth in 2 hours, whereas the first one was 14 hours. And I was like, you know, tense for the whole time. So I think it's so amazing what you said, Anna, because I didn't really think about that in that way. So my body must have been so tense in protective mode, you know, like mother bear kind of thing. Whereas my second one, I was like, oh, whatever, I'm ready to watch the horse racing after this, you know. But the funny thing is, my first child is an actually more anxious person than my second child. So I think it really, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think with the first birth, you know, the doctors kept coming in and we just let them, you know, and we kind of like shoo them away after a while because, you know, they were interrupting. Yeah, but the second one was in a private hospital, and both times Jamie is a quiet person, and you know, we both don't sing and scream and shout. So when, you know, she looked like she was ready, and I could tell, and even though we were only there for a little bit, I'm like, I think she's ready. And I told the nurse, and then she's like, "Oh, you've only been here for this long, ha ha ha." I said, "Can we go to the birthing room now?" And she's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Can we check?" And then when she checked Jamie was like almost a 10, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to run and get you a doctor and run and get your, you know, wheelchair." And we're like, "Oh, where's the birthing room?" "It's just over there. We'll walk." And she was panicking, and we're like, "No, this is good. We know this. We know what we need to do."
That's night and day,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. And just a reminder to the doctor, "Hey, we want to have delayed clamping," you know, just a reminder. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "Can I, you know, cut now and clamp now?" We're like, "No, it's, look at the blood's still going. So can we wait?" And she's like, "Oh," you know, we're telling the doctor what to do, but we did it calmly. And so
Definitely wasn't like a battle like the first one.
yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I think another tip that the ladies haven't told you yet is the Immortel for the perineum, right? So, you know, make that as a spritzer. And then Debbie, do you do it before and during and after?
You could
Yeah.
do it during the pushing phase.
Mhm.
I use about a third of a roller bottle of Immortel with
Mhm.
about 1 to 2 ounces of fractionated coconut oil for the moms.
Yeah.
And yeah, another thing, you know, that as you're talking about the Immortel, Karen talked about yarrow palm. I have used helichrysum
Mhm.
to prevent postpartum hemorrhage multiple times. I have a number of midwives that are sold on helichrysum now because of its effectiveness. So helichrysum is one that's in my bag as well.
Yeah.
I have that written down too. It's good.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, and helichrysum can be used when they're about 8 to 9 centimeters, especially if they've had a history of postpartum hemorrhage. I just apply it to their low back and their low abdomen. And it's also a uterine tonic, so it keeps things going. It keeps the uterus contracting for labor and as well as after birth.
Yeah. So get stocked up, that yarrow palm deal this month. Yeah, take advantage of that. And then also, ladies, will you talk about the benefit of Terrazyme?
Oh, talk about the benefits of Terrazyme. I think everybody should be on Terrazyme, but every pregnant mother should be on Terrazyme for certain. During pregnancy, we increase their protein intake. They're building a baby 24/7, and that takes a little more protein intake. And so I recommend 70 to 90 grams at least of protein. If they're with twins, it's much more than that, but grams of protein a day. And Terrazyme is magnificent for helping them break that down into micronutrients so they can actually utilize it for growing that baby. When taken on an empty stomach, I don't know that a pregnant mama has an empty stomach very often, or she shouldn't have an empty stomach very often. It can help rebuild connective tissue. And so that's really helpful for not only pregnancy, for also recovery, as well as for the baby. And so Terrazyme is a really helpful thing. And so is PB Assist. Recommend the Lifelong Vitality Pack, Terrazyme, PB Assist. Those are everyday uses during pregnancy.
The XCO is great because it doesn't have that, like, if you burp it back up, it doesn't have that like fish oil.
Yeah,
that
omega.
moms. Yeah, it's by far the best omega, I feel like.
Mhm.
Yeah, so good. Anna, do you want to say anything there?
I agree with all of the above.
Yeah. And Jamie, you've had a wonderful experience with those products, and Terrazyme especially after the
Yeah.
birth.
I think after you give birth, you're really, really swollen, down there. So, you don't really want to push anything because you're so sore. And I just could not go, even though I'm genuinely very regular. But Terrazyme really helped me go.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend it enough. Yeah.
Yep. Saved your life.
Yeah. Do you have an epidural, or you had no epidural and you still couldn't go?
No, I
Okay.
had nothing. I had nothing. Yeah. I was
That's-
all natural.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
But I did tear for both of them. So the Immortel and Helichrysum spray really saved me because I just could not pee without peeing. So I had to spray that before and after, and have a warm bottle of water to just pour down there while I'm going, because it was that painful.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I ended up getting a catheter after every single one, and I thought it was because I had an epidural, and so I was still like numb, like everything was numb. So, but to know that you had that, I mean, you had problems going even without an epidural, then I could run into that problem again. So,
Oh, a good trick:
Don't plan on that.
peppermint in the
Don't plan on
toilet.
problems.
You're having a hard time going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
peppermint oil in the bathroom, like,
Put it in the toilet, like a couple drops in the toilet after, like immediately after, like postpartum, within the first couple of hours. Your midwife's going to want to have you have you at least pee before she leaves. And sometimes it's just reminiscent of pushing, and so our pelvic floors are just sometimes having a hard time letting go. And especially if you feel like it might sting or anything. So just putting a drop of peppermint, it just allows you to go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Take it internally. Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Planning on all going well. Yeah. Sierra.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought up not rushing to cut the umbilical cord. Everybody should read about delayed cord cutting and milking the cord to the baby. That's just really great information to educate yourself about. So.
Yeah, that's very good. We can talk about a ton of things, but I think this is a good start. And if we need to, bring up more topics, ladies, and I'm sure that Anna and Debbie and Karen will be happy to jump on again and share more information with us. But yeah, let's end with just what advice, that we haven't even talked about yet, but what one advice would you give to mums listening to this recording, ladies?
One thing I would say is that we need to remember that woman was the culmination of all of God's creations. He dotted all his I's and crossed all his T's, and he gave us everything we needed to do this. Our bodies were made to do this. We only have a uterus for this purpose. Every month, our uterus puts out the red carpet in hopes that conception takes place. And when it doesn't, it sloughs off the red carpet and it begins anew. And when conception takes place, this embryo has a really nice soft landing. And before mom knows she's pregnant even, everything's re-sculpting itself for this baby, for this pregnancy. And so there's no thought process other than the love making, maybe the desire to get pregnant. There's really no thought. Once the conception happens, mother can't think about what's coming next, how the cells are dividing. It just happens. The heart starts beating. And so trusting in that creation, trusting in our creator is magnificent. I think, Mom, this birth is a letting go exercise. We need to let go and let our bodies do what it was designed to do. And so if Mom can just let go and relax and just let her birthing body do the work, it saves her so much energy and time.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Debbie. See, guys, that's why I was so confident. I was trained by Debbie. Karen.
So I
No, go ahead, Anna.
Anna.
go ahead.
Well, I'll say something not as beautiful, but you're just that you're the center of that day, and everyone around you wants to help, and so you can just kind of see it as they're your little angels. Seriously, they want to help. So if you're like, I need a cloth, or I need pressure on my back, or I need chapstick, or I need water, like they're ready and willing and jump. So don't hold it all in. Just tell the people what you need. Tell your team around you what you need.
You're the queen for the day.
Yes.
Yes, take it. Beautiful. Anna.
So while I'm a huge, proponent for home birth and out of hospital birth, sometimes there's situations where you have to deliver in the hospital. And, there's certain situations where it's in the state of Florida, we have specific laws, for instance, with VBACs. So sometimes you might be in a hospital setting that you can still have a beautiful, wonderful, natural birth in the hospital. And I think one of the most important things, if you are giving birth, whether it's at home, in a birth center, at the hospital, is making that environment feel like home. So bringing your diffuser, bringing a blanket or a pillow or things from home that feel home-like. When that room is set up differently, the lights are low, you might have some flameless candles or the diffuser going. When those nurses walk into that room or the doctor walks into that room, they feel something different and they treat you differently than when they come into a room that is loud, feeling out of control, the mom's feeling out of control, the partner's unprepared. There's a whole different energy in the room. We all know how much energy affects when things aren't balanced. And so, creating that environment is key. And when you go into that setting, whether it's with your midwife at home or if it's in the hospital with a doctor, is making sure that you aren't on the defense and that you are creating that, sacred, safe space. And sometimes in the hospital, it isn't that way. And you do have to, just make sure that you feel that this is that it is your birth. You have the right to make whatever choices you want. And if you don't like the nurse, you can tell them to leave.
They're
you can ask
your space.
Exactly. Even if you don't like the doctor who you chose, if you want somebody else to, be the one to catch your baby or whatever is the situation, you have the right, so depending on what, how things are going, you can, if they aren't agreeing with your birth plan, you have rights. So obviously, a home birth situation is ideal for so many people, but it's not always possible.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Such great advice. I love it. I know it's time, but one thing that Anna said that reminded me, Debbie taught me that, the husband has a letdown, right? Like the mom has a letdown of milk, but when the husband receives his child, it sort of like switches him into this daddy mode. And I can testify to you how powerful that is, because, with my brother-in-law, with my friend and her husband, it was like so beautiful to watch. And so when it was that moment, the doctor says, okay, the baby's ready to come. I'm like, hey, Stephen, ready to receive your child? And he stood there frozen. He's this big, tall giant, and he's frozen. And, he's sobbing already. And I'm pulling him over, and I'm pulling up his sleeves, and he's just shoulder sobbing, like, oh my gosh, you know. And I remember Debbie's voice, and I'm like, okay, this is him having this letdown. And her head looked peeked out just a little bit, and he's like, she's so beautiful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. It's so sweet. And he's just like, oh, shaking and shaking. And I'm like, you can do this. And it was just his moment. And then the same with my friend's husband, Jacob. He did the exact same thing. He's sobbing and he's shaking. I mean, that's just so beautiful. So Debbie, do you want to add to that and tell us more?
Yeah, that when the father receives his own baby, it changes him forever, just like it does a mother when she births her own baby, right? It changes him forever. And that skin to skin is vital. If we share that skin to skin, obviously the father does not have the thermostat that the mother's breasts do. And that's a beautiful thing in nature too, is that the mother's breast will warm the baby up if they're cold, will cool them off if they're feverish. The father doesn't have a thermostat, but the skin to skin actually helps him have a letdown of prolactin, which is the breastfeeding hormone for the mother. He's not going to lactate with this prolactin letdown, but he will be much more involved in that baby's life for forevermore. And so it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. All right, we should end here. Sierra, did you have something? Your hand was up. Okay. We'll just lower the hand. Fantastic. I love you guys so much. Thank you for taking the time and being here and spending this moment with us. It was so educational. I hope you guys get to share this video with a lot of your friends, and you know, we can always talk more about this and you know, contact these lovely ladies and share this message with the world. So this is super important, ladies. Thank you, and I'll end the recording now.